Just how much more can this market take? Whether it's the Supreme Court ruling on tariffs, a potential war between the United States and Iran, hot PCE, weak GDP, and oh yeah, NVIDIA earnings coming this week on Wednesday. It is a powder keg about to explode, and more than likely, we get the decisive move either up or down this week. And in today's Sunday setup, I'm going to get you prepared for everything you need to know so that you can absolutely crush the markets. Let's make it happen. Oh, yeah. All right, guys, so we are going to start by taking a look at our Discord group where I post a ton of information. And I'm just going to review a few things because they're handily here for us. They're convenient. But I also want to just show this to you guys. If you're interested and you want to get access to tons of charts, tons of information to the market, you could see the volume of charts that are posted here to get you set up for the upcoming week in the markets. Just reach out to me, just comment on this video and I could show you how to access that. But this is a valuable resource. And we're going to start here because I want to show you what is happening this week that's going to make it so significant. We're going to begin by clicking on this earnings chart to take a look at who is reporting this week, which earnings reports I am keen on, who I am watching. And we're going to start here by looking at Monday. And we could see that HIMS is going to report at market close. Now, they have been destroyed here as of late. We'll actually take a look at the chart. But I am interested to see how they report, if they can get a little bit of a bounce this week. On Tuesday before open, we are going to get the Home Depot reporting ahead of market open. And again, we'll see if the Supreme Court ruling against tariffs lifts the sentiment around retailers. So this will be one I want to watch to see how it plays out. And then we come over to Wednesday. This is the big day in the market that everybody is waiting for because at close, none other than NVIDIA reports, and everybody is waiting to see what happens here. Now, based on this report, whatever the forward guidance is, if it's positive, if it's strong, then that's coupled with a beat and raise, we can see the market begin to move higher. Now, NVIDIA is a victim of its own success. And if it's not perfect, if they don't thread the needle and they miss on one number, they will get dumped. And if you remember back to the last time that they reported, they gapped up. This was in November. They gapped up. And everybody was, all the bulls were celebrating. And then the day after they dropped it, sold it down, and the market had one of its most significant down days in quite some time. So that is going to be very significant there on Wednesday. Then you also have the trade desk. I cannot wait to see how they report. There is a massive falling wedge pattern on the daily, the weekly, the monthly. And it doesn't look like things can get much worse for this company, but never say never in the market. So I am interested to see what happens there. And I'm also interested to see how IonQ reports. We haven't heard a lot about the quantum computing sector in some time, so that will be interesting to see. And then on Thursday, we're going to get CoreWeave reporting at close. Marathon Digital Holdings. We'll get their report. And then we will also get SoundHound, which I know all of you out there in YouTube land have a soft spot for SoundHound. So that is going to be a fun one to watch. So this is going to be a great week of earnings. I can't wait, but make sure you are ready for Wednesday and the king, NVIDIA reporting. Next up, let's take a look at the data that's going to be reported this week. And it's pretty light outside of a piece of information that we're going to get on Friday. But you could see here on Monday, not much of anything that I'm watching. We are going to have some Fed speakers this week. Fed Waller is going to be speaking here on Monday. And let's just take a look at what else we're getting this week. On Tuesday, you have more Fed speaker, Goolsbee, Bostic, Collins, Waller, Cook. So they're going to be out in full force. Barkin, Collins again. And remember, there was no Fed meeting here in February. There was no Powell presser. We'll get that in March. but they are making their rounds. Nothing I'm really watching there on Tuesday in terms of data. And then on Wednesday, again, more Fed speakers, but nothing of note here data-wise. And then Thursday, we do get initial jobless claims. So that'll be something to pay attention to just to get some insight into what is happening in the labor market, but really not a lot of big movers, just a week time frame for data. And it's really all about NVIDIA earnings this week. But it is Friday where we will really get a key piece of information, because we will get the producer price index, which is PPI. That is an inflation report expected to come in at 0.3. Previously, it was at 0.5. So we know that if we come in line or below, that is positive for the markets. We should get a bullish response. If we come in hotter, that would be a hot PCE, a hot PPI, and we will drop. So just make sure you're prepared for that. That's going to be 8:30 a.m. But again, a pretty light week in terms of data for the markets. And now let's jump into the charts, ladies and gentlemen, beginning with the SPX. And here we could see that we did print a lower low here. And let me just move some stuff out of the way so I could see the actual dates here. But this was on Tuesday, February 17th, where we printed that low. But notice that the buyers did step in here and we did get a bounce. Now, on Wednesday, we did push above the 50 SMA, but got rejected, came back down. And then on Friday, we had nice bull volume come in. We saw the RSI tick up a little bit. So a little bit of momentum here. And we are above all the moving averages here on the daily. However, if we're looking at this in context from the moment we hit 7,000, which is back on January 28th, we have been printing lower highs. And this was a lower high from the 20th. And when I say everything hinges on NVIDIA, I mean it, because the market essentially has been sideways since October. We've just been range bound, and something is going to have to break us out. Now, we have a lot of pressure downwards on the market, the whole talk of an AI bubble, waiting for that bubble to pop, inflation heating back up as a result of tariffs, the tariffs getting struck down by the Supreme Court, and Trump saying that he has a new method to tariff countries. So you have that out there. You have US versus Iran. There are so many negative catalysts out there. So it's going to take something very strong, something very positive, and that could come in the form of NVIDIA earnings, something that we can't anticipate or foresee. So that's why Wednesday is so big, but the structure still shows weakness in some levels of concern. So pay attention here. We are printing lower lows. This is a lower high. Let's see what happens here on Monday. When we look at the Qs, we are below the 100. Now, we had 5 green days in a row. You do have buyers stepping in here. We did close above the 10-day exponential moving average, but again, we did print a lower low here on the 17th, and we have a lower high. We were rejected here on the 20 EMA daily. And so even though we had nice bull volume coming in here, this is not out of the woods. And again, we have been range bound for quite some time. And more specifically with the Qs, because this is big tech, if NVIDIA falters on their report, the Qs are coming down to the 200 and even below that. So that's going to happen. But if NVIDIA reports strongly, get ready for a massive move. We will go to all-time highs. But when we look at the NVIDIA charts, they haven't reported a significant pop off of earnings in quite some time. But again, the structure here tells us that we still need to be cautious. Taking a look at the Dow Jones Industrial, you have this upper trend line resistance. It nearly got up here. It was pushing, but then it dropped back down. We closed right on that 10-day exponential moving average. And I will say this, if we see money start to flow into the QQQ and big tech, you'll see money come out of the Dow Jones Industrial. So just keep an eye on that. It hasn't been below that 50. We've got to go back to November. So if big tech starts to make a run, you will see it drop down here. But we did have a nice little pop here on the Dow, but we are now just hanging out down by the 50. And then IWM, this structure looks bullish here because we're pushing up, retest into the 100, pushing up, retest into the 50, pushing up, new all-time highs, reversal candle, drop down to the 50, push back up. But notice we are printing lower high. So the question here, is this simply a retest for a move higher, or is this about to roll over? We are above all of the moving averages here. You did have nice bullish volume come in for IWM on Friday. And so let's see what happens. We're sitting right on the point of control. Again, watching to see what happens with the Qs. If the flows are into the Qs, then potentially that could draw some of the money out of IWM. We'll see what happens here, but watch those lower highs that are getting printed. And then if we come over, we look at the Hang Seng Index. This is the Chinese market. You do have a head and shoulders pattern here. Drop down on Friday, saved by the 50, but this one looks like it wants to come lower. And typically, whenever we see the Chinese market falter a bit, some of those flows come back into the US. So keep an eye on that if that wants to drop. And then we take a look at TLT. It is hanging in there. It did fill this gap at 89.93, and it did retest back into the 10, found some buyers here. And there is another gap to fill at 91.01. So if we continue to see a flight to safety trade, you'll see money flow into bonds. And what does that mean for the 10-year? That means the 10-year drops. And so the yields did dip a bit this week. You did see it bounce a little bit here on Friday, but it is lower. When we take a look at the dollar here, you do have a double bottom, and we have a lower low, higher low, double bottom, finding a little bit of resistance here into the 50 SMA on the daily. This looks like a retest of the neckline of that head and shoulder. So let's see if this one wants to roll over. And remember, a weak dollar is good for stocks. And then we have the VIX, the Volatility S&P 500 index continues to print higher lows. And we haven't had a massive spike yet. We've had some spikes, but are we going to get something like this to drop us? And you still have to lean towards that because the market is still extended, and it's just a handful of stocks propping this thing up. NVIDIA could pop the balloon here on Wednesday, and the flush needs to happen, because when you look at the majority of these stocks here on the charts, they just continue to look like trash, just straight up. And if the broader markets fall even more, then we're going to see those stocks fall even more. So just something to keep in mind. And then coming over to Bitcoin here, just again, moving sideways and not a lot doing here. You do have some momentum showing on the RSI. The price action looks like it was trying to push up, but right now as we speak, we're down 576 points. We'll see what happens here. An interesting thing is we saw the crypto proxy stocks like Coinbase, like Robinhood, CRCL, stablecoin company. We did see some noticeable bounces there, which I thought was interesting. So it could be indicative that buyers are stepping in here slowly to Bitcoin. Not that this move down is over, but you would have to think that the longevity of this move is probably waning at this point, meaning that yes, it can come lower, but it's probably not going to be that much lower. Maybe down to, if it really wants to drop 50 to 48,000, if they really want to dump this, but that's would not be a significant move in my book, because this thing is already jacked up significantly. But I think that there is some accumulation coming in here, just what I've seen playing out here on the charts here as of late. So keep an eye on this, but more than likely we're going to get some more downside, because we're just sitting right here on this volume node on the daily chart. If we take a look at the weekly here real fast, you do have the 200 down below. And then one last thing to point out is if we finish red this month, which more than likely we will on Bitcoin, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red months in a row. And the last time that has occurred on Bitcoin, you have to go back to 2018. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 6 red months, and then that started a climb back up. So it's just something to keep in mind. At some point, there will be capitulation where everybody's saying that Bitcoin is trash, it's going to zero. But for right now, it is just moving sideways. And then we'll take a look at gold. A whole lot of nothing after that drop off of that indecision candle. It's just stuck there to the 10. And let's see if that one wants to roll over as well. So the day trading plays that I'm watching for this week, I do have CRCL here on my chart. We are above the 10-day exponential moving average. We do have the 20 EMA on the daily above us, but I like the room up here to the 50. So I will look for some quick day trades here. That thin area volume, no moving averages. I could probably get some nice scalps and day trades. APLD, I like this one for some day trades as well, because every time we have tested this 100, we have gotten a bounce. So I'm looking to see if that is true here as well. So I'm going to be watching APLD. Again, I'm just going through my day trade opportunities here for this week. Coinbase is another one, printed that double bottom last week, had a nice response off earnings. It actually closed above the 10-day exponential moving average. It has the 20 above it, but you can see if it clears that, it does have room up to the 50 EMA at 212 and the 50 SMA at 218.21. So watching that one as well. And SMCI, we have the supportive trend line that has been established. We're getting bounces here. We did get capped here by the 50 EMA. Let's see if we can get above that. If we do, we have room up to 35.56. This is the 100 EMA on the daily. And then you have room up here to the 100 SMA on the daily at 37.83. So some room there for some day trades. And then MU, I just continue to scout this one like crazy, just straight up, nice retest, pull back into the 20, push back up, pull back down into the 20 again. So I'll be looking for some bullish scalps here on this one. Being quick, because this one could flip lower quickly and we're seeing the bull volume decline. But again, this has been a money printer for me in terms of scalps. And then UNH, this is one that I liked last week. I like it even more this week. Inverted head and shoulders here on the daily. We are above the 10. And in terms of resistance, we have the 20 EMA on the daily above us. But if we can clear that, we can get up to the 50 EMA at 309.97. And then you have the major SMA here at 317.82. That's the 50 SMA. And you have the 200 there as well. Watching this for a pop, there could be some good day trade opportunities here. I do own this in my long-term portfolio, but these are the 6 that I'm watching for day trade opportunities. All right, so let's jump into the Mag 9 and see what's happening. So here's the big story of the week. It's going to be NVIDIA. We could see we have the supportive trend line where we bounced since September multiple times. And the last time we touched this was February 5th. We are now back above all those moving averages. But look at this. We've been sideways. Excluding this pop that we had here at the end of October, we have been sideways since July, the end of July. And typically when something's moving sideways, pressure is building and we're sitting above the 100 and the 50. The 200 is down here. We nearly retested that on February 5th. You have a lot of support here on the VRVP. And again, however NVIDIA reports is what's going to influence the market. If it's poor, we're coming down, people, below that 200, and that's going to trigger a full-on correction in the market. If it's positive, we'll gap up, we'll test these highs, but who knows what's going to happen. But that is just straight sideways movement. Taking a look at Broadcom, we still have the overhead gap at 394.09 to fill. We have the gap below at 254.23. We're getting compressed by the moving averages. That 50 crossed down through that 100. Which if you're a bull, you don't like to see. You don't want to see it curl down to the 200 here and get a death cross. But this one is trying, but continues to get rejected. They will report earnings here on March 4th. So that's 2 weeks away. And moving on to Tesla. So Tesla typically struggles at this time of year. If NVIDIA rips, Tesla will drop lower. And if it does, keep an eye on these 2 gaps here, 368.33 and 339.51. That would be below the 200, but Tesla, again, Tesla and NVIDIA do not run together, and a strong report by NVIDIA could put pressure to the downside on Tesla. And then we take a look at Netflix, look at this. Finally got a nice green candle that came in here, but notice it did not get above the 10-day exponential moving average. It has not closed above the 10. We have to go back to right here, December 2nd. So this thing just continues to fall. It continues to drop, but we are seeing a little bit of divergence here. And it's going to take this issue with Warner Brothers to get resolved before it moves. I continue to like it, but I would not be surprised to see this gap filled at 70.43 before it does anything. And then taking a look at Microsoft, again, that big, massive double top continues to play out. There's one more gap to fill down here at 367.76. This looks like it's just retesting into that 10. It's ready to drip lower. Wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. and I am not touching this company at this point. And then you have Amazon, gap down significantly on earnings, nearly filled this gap here at 194.62 on February 17th. Got a little bit of a bounce here on Friday, closed above the 10, but we still have those two gaps to the downside. And look at all this resistance overhead that it's going to have to push through in order for it to move. This one looks like it wants to come down a little bit lower. Google finally got a retest. We thought it was going to bounce to 50, didn't, drop down to the 100, got a bounce into the 50 EMA, the point of control. You have these thick volume nodes here, the 50 SMA. This one's going to have to get some love to press through there. If not, it's going to get rejected and come back down. And watch this gap fill 262.38 as a potential bouncing spot. It'll be interesting to see if NVIDIA gaps up, if that takes some of the flows out of Google and puts them into NVIDIA, if that's what happens. But this chart looks like it can come lower. Apple, head and shoulders pattern here. It tried to push again, but got rejected hard. Bounced down around what price is at 255.32, but you can see it got rejected off the 10, and it's got the 100 and the 50 above it. All of these volume nodes, the point of control. Let's see if this one wants to come back down and retest this 200 EMA daily, and then you have the 200 SMA here. And again, if we see flows into NVIDIA, if NVIDIA rips, let's see if there's pressure on Apple to the downside. And then you have Meta again, after that big gap up on earnings, dropped down, got crushed again, but we're still making higher lows, but we are below all of the moving averages. Resistance overhead in terms of the point of control, thick volume nodes, the 50, the 100, the 200. When will this thing resume its move back up? They announced a deal that they had to buy NVIDIA chips this week, would cause a little bit of a bump in NVIDIA and some downside price action on Meta. But you'd have to think that this one eventually has to move, or maybe it doesn't. So we'll see. And then the trade desk is going to be reporting on Wednesday. I cannot wait for this report. I am so excited to see what happens here. But you have this massive falling wedge pattern. You have it here on the daily, you have it on the weekly, and you even have it on the monthly. So falling wedge typically resolves to the upside. But here's the thing. There's nothing positive or bullish on this chart whatsoever. Now, I will say this. In the 13F filings that came out here recently, a lot of major institutions purchased the trade desk at this price area. So I would not be surprised to see sentiment flip here, because the sentiment is garbage on this stock. But stick with this one. This is a long-term story. It should be back. Let's see what happens. This is going to be fun, but there's nothing bullish about this chart. So you don't want to try and catch a falling knife. I just like watching this one. I get little obsessions with tickers. It used to be Roku. Now it's the trade desk. So I'm just enjoying the journey here, watching this one play out. All right. So let's take a look at a few more tickers here. Robinhood. Uh-oh. Death cross. Are we going to come lower? Look how we're trading inside of this big bearish candle here from February 12th. Looks like this one wants to come down and maybe tap that 100 SMA on the weekly. MSTR tried to get above the 10 on Friday, didn't happen, got rejected. And then Oracle, I continue to like this stock. Again, I'm not taking a position on it yet. I'm waiting to see if this gap gets filled at 127.38, and then I would be willing to start grabbing some shares for a longer term position to just sit on and hold. This one just continues to get pounded after that big, huge move that it had to the upside. So we'll see what happens there. And let's just take a look at a few more here. Caterpillar has just been super strong. This upside move retested into the 10. Let's see if we get continuation there. We do see we're getting some upper wicks come in. That's probably profit taking, but let's see if it wants to have another push up. But watch tickers like this, like Caterpillar, John Deere, other industrials. If you see flows back into big tech, you'll see these ones take a little bit of a rest. And then HIMS, which is going to be reporting on Monday. Look how small these candles are here, and look how oversold this beast is. Now, you do have a gap fill at 12.98 and 10.28. And here's the thing about HIMS. It can print some massive candles. Let's see if the sentiment, because it's so awful, if there's just a surprise beat and a strong move to the upside. I don't have a position here. I'm just watching it, but this move looks pretty overcooked in my opinion. And let's take a look at a few more. Palantir continues to get crushed. Watch to see if we get the death cross here, because that 50 is approaching that 200. You have a gap to fill down here at 96.38. This one continues to get pressured to the downside, and Michael Burry continues to just trash the stock and this company and its accounting practices and says that it's way overvalued. So let's see if Burry's correct and if this one drops even further. He's also said the same thing about NVIDIA, and he put a post out there, I think it was either today or yesterday, on X, where he compared NVIDIA to RCA, which radio company back in 1929 was a super hot stock and radio was growing over time. And he talked about how it was a super hot stock, but it lost 98% of its value, even though the radio space continued to grow. And he's basically saying that potentially can happen to NVIDIA. So we'll see who is right there. And let's see if there's anything else that I want to cover here on this chart. Yeah, so I'm just going to look at two more here. So this is Carvana. So Carvana actually so this was here. So they reported earnings, and we're going to have to come into the 4 hours so you can see this move. You can see that it had a pretty big gap down, but it responded pretty nicely, rebounded quite a bit. But there's a company that initiated a short report. Let's see if I could pull it up here and find it. Let's see, where is it? Hold on, guys. Bear with me while I'm looking for it. There was a short report released. Here we go. So there's a short seller allegation. Hindenburg is the name of the short report, saying that there's fraudulent accounting practices for Carvana. And that's what caused probably a little bit of this exaggerated sell down here. Carvana dismissed those reports, and you actually seen that some price targets did get cut on Carvana, but still 550 to 465. 465 is a huge price here. Carvana maintained overweight by Barclays, cut from 530 to 450, still pretty strong. So this will be an interesting one to watch. And then the last one that I want to look at here is John Deere, because this one had a massive move here on earnings. So you can see, look at this move. So from the previous close to the high the next day, $80 move. That's just beautiful. Look at that gap up. I love to see bullish gap ups that hold like this. So this will be interesting to see here if it continues to grind higher, or if it wants to trade inside this candle a little bit. Eventually it'll come down until this gap, but just a great move there on John Deere. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You are prepared now for the week in the stock market, and I hope that you crush it. And what do we have coming up here? So we are going to be live streaming the Powell presser in March. So I'll have some information related to that. And I'm working on some new things with the channel. I haven't been posting a ton, but I am just trying to work out some specifics here. And instead of promising, just watch, things are coming. But I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a tremendous week. And let me know down in the comments, what are you looking forward to this week? What is your best play? I would love to hear it. And does NVIDIA gap up or down? And it's going to be a fun week. This should give us the direction that we need, and go out there and crush it. Take care, everyone. Don't care.